Hey everybody, this is Mr. Johnson, and I'm going to read aloud a story for you today for Constitution Day. Today's Constitution Day, it's a day that we celebrate the Constitution, which is like a set of laws that we follow for our whole country. The reason I'm wearing this awesome George Washington wig is because George Washington was the first president of our country, and Article 2 of the Constitution provides for us the opportunity to vote for our president, the person who will help lead our country. So the story I want to read for you today is Grace for President. Grace for President. It's written by Kelly DiPuccio, and the pictures are by Luen Pham. Grace for President. Lots of past presidents there. Goodness, we could name them all, but we got to get going with our video. Here we go. Grace for President. Go. There's all of the presidents. It says, one Monday morning in September, Mrs. Barrington rolled out a big poster with all of the president's pictures on it. Grace Campbell could not believe her eyes. Where are the girls? She asked. That is a very good question, said Mrs. Barrington. The truth is, our country has never had a woman president. No girl presidents? Ever? Grace asked. No, I'm afraid not, said Mrs. Barrington. Grace sat at her desk and stewed, which means she was angry. No girls? Who'd ever heard of such a thing? Finally, she raised her hand. Yes, Grace. I've been thinking it over, and I'd like to be president. Several students in the class laughed. Well, I think that's a star-spangled idea, Grace, said Mrs. Barrington. In fact, we can have our own election right here at Woodrow Wilson Elementary. Woodrow Wilson was once one of our presidents. The snickering, which means the laughing, in the room stopped. Grace smiled. Would anyone else like to run for president? Mrs. Barrington asked the class. Nobody raised their hand. Becoming president was going to be easier than Grace thought. The next day, however, Mrs. Barrington made an announcement.